That's foul chat right there. Look.
So Wendy and David are back with us.
Hi, Wendy and David. Hi.
Hi. Well, they actually need me. This sounds like a good social occasion.
Well, I think that's
Someone's going chirpy.
Okay, well, a very warm welcome, everybody, to from Westhoughton Local History Group for Zoom session number 5. These months are ticking by. Hope you've all had a lovely Easter weekend and got all your gardening done and everything else. And I don't know whether we've any newcomers who haven't been with us before, but if we have, a special warm welcome to them. I see we've got quite a geographical spread again, and so it's lovely to see the familiar faces. Our speaker tonight, I almost said guest speaker, hardly the right description really, because I think most of you will know Garth, who's our group vice chairman. He's arguably the hardest working member of the gang. He never stops. He's constantly researching and writing and digging out information and handling our various projects, and it's a never-ending task for him. It's quite wonderful, his contributions to the group over the years, and the latest of which is coming tonight. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Garth, who's going to take us on an amble around Westhoughton Town Centre.
As David says, my name is Garth Ratcliffe. I'm the Vice Chairman of Westhoughton Local History Group. A little bit more about me. I was born in Westhoughton and lived at 6 Mill Street for 23 years until about 1965. So don't ask me any questions about the new estates in Westhoughton. I won't be able to answer them. Right, now this talk, Westhoughton Town Trail, can start when you've all got your walking boots on. Right. So this talk is based on a booklet produced by Westhoughton Local History called the Town Trail, produced a number of years ago. And it had a number of excellent drawings by Tom Newton. What I've done is basically substitute many of these drawings by photographs. So there's the booklet I was referring to. It still exists and it's still available, but quite how we would get it to you, I'm not sure. So I shall be going through this talk fairly rapidly, so if you want an amble down Market Street, which is essentially what this publication is about, perhaps you could buy a copy for £2, maybe from the library or maybe from Val at some point later on. Right, so Westhoughton Town Trail. The Town Trail essentially covers Market Street, which is shown on this map here, and I'll refer to this a few times. Here we have Bolton Road, Park Road, Mill Street, and what is missing from this map is a date, and we could hazard a guess at the date of this map because there is a bank there where the town hall exists and where the trees where the library exists. Glebe Mill is there. The Bethel, which I think was built in 1853, is in its present site. We should be talking quite a bit about this locality here, which was Westhoughton Mill, and this area here, which is now Central Park, but was in fact some sort of a reservoir. So I suggest this map is maybe early 1950s, 1850s, 60s, something like that. We'll also talk about this water here, which is next to the mill in a minute or so. Now, the oldest building on Market Street is undoubtedly the White Lion, number 2 Market Street, and this it was mentioned in ale recognisance of 1748 when the innkeeper was John Magnon. But at the other end of the pub was a post office, and the stagecoaches and mail coaches delivered letters there. This present photograph is of George Grundy, and the Grundy family were the licensees of this establishment for decades. Oh, I don't need to repeat that. On the front of the White Lion is a blue plaque that Westhoughton Local History Group installed for the bicentenary of the burning of the mill. That's in 2012. And we've installed about 4 blue plaques around the town. This was one of them. So on the 24th of April 1812, the looms of a steam-powered mill built across from here on the factory Nook in 1803 were smashed, and the mill set alight by Luddite rioters, 4 of whom were hanged and 9 transported to Australia for 7 years. Now, most of our previous presentations have had a bit of death, murder, crime and whatnot, and we've managed to keep this tradition going with this presentation. The Luddites, in fact, were not from Westhoughton, but came from Chowbend Avenue. Here's a picture of the Westhoughton Mill. Sometimes it's referred to as Westhoughton Factory, sometimes Westhoughton Mill. It's certainly the same establishment. So the 3 men and a boy were hung at Lancaster Castle for the offence of breaking in and setting fire to this mill. The mill NOOK, or factory NOOK, again I'll show you on the map in a minute or two. These are cottages at the bottom of the site where the mill was, and it is alleged that the people who burned the mill down obtained some coals, some burning coals from one of these cottages, and set the cotton and wooden looms on fire with that material. So these are cottages that have been updated, and you'll notice that there are some heads, or carved heads, over the doorway, and there's a plaque here on the end of this cottage which was put up in 1991, previous to our effort on the White Lion. But it was thought that this plaque was a little bit out of the way, so that's why I put one on the White Lion. Now, let's talk about this aerial photograph first of all. This is the site of the old mill. There's the White Lion. Here's Bolton Road, Park Road, Market Street, and Glebe Mill, and the town hall and the library. So those are the cottages that I was just referring to. Here's the Reform Club, and it's Bowling Green. And the second one of those houses there, 6 Mill Street, was where I was brought up as a lad. This mill was built in 1803 by someone called Richard Johnson Lockett, who lived at Westhoughton Hall, sorry, and it was quite a modern mill at the time, having a steam engine and running 170 pairs of loom, but it was burned down because the Luddites considered this mill to be a threat to their livelihoods. They were home weavers, and they could see their livelihood being taken away because factories, cotton factories, looms could be operated by unskilled people, and produce cotton much cheaper, so their livelihood was being undermined, so that it was a case of, well, Luddism destroying the enemy type of thing. I won't go into the details of what happened to the mill afterwards, but although the mill was set on fire, it wasn't destroyed completely. It was used for other purposes. And I'll mention this at the bottom, this name of Peter Ditchfield. He continued some production in the mill for years after, but we'll talk about that in more detail later. The factory was in fact demolished in the early 1900s, and the site was basically just spare land. But in 1918 there was a notable event when there was an ox roasted on the factory nook to celebrate peace celebrations, the end of the war. Now here's something at the end that I feel very strongly about. Twice a year, life in 6 Mill Street was turned upside down because we had a fairground at the front doorstep, made with generators for the electricity for the lights, making noise at all hours. And you literally had to, you couldn't hear somebody knocking on the front door. The noise was so intrusive, and it certainly wouldn't be allowed under health and safety in this day and age. But we survived. But certainly lots of people enjoyed going to the fair on the Nook. Dam's Head Fold is located about 100 yards up Bolton Road from the White Lion. It's a very, very old, it doesn't exist now, it's been demolished, but it's a very old locality. So Dam's Head Fold, there's a higher Dam's Head and a lower Dam's Head, and there's actually a farm called Dam's Head Fold Farm, and the entrance to that farm was at number 31 Bolton Road. But this slide talks about the dam on this next slide. Going back to 1725, and this is one of the oldest sketch maps we have of Westhoughton, there was a dam called Black Dam at the location of Central Park. And I'm not clear how this dam was filled. There must have been some stream running into it, but the idea was to use this reservoir of water to drive water wheels in some factories. But you'll notice the old names on this sketch map. Chapel Common Lane was the original name for Market Street. Blake Dam Lane for Bolton Road, etc. And one or two other, Long Lane, is that Long West Lane maybe, for Church Street, and Landerman's Lane for Lee Road. So this is a very interesting map, but you notice there are no buildings on it. It seems to be some sort of sketch map indicating ownership or how land was divided up. So that's 1725. So going back to the map I showed you before, this was where the Blake Dam was located, or now Central Park. That's Dam's Head Fold, Glebe Mill, and you'll notice this reservoir of water which was needed to drive the steam turbines of the cotton mill. And at one time I stupidly thought that water would have come from this from this locality here, but even the Victorians couldn't make water go uphill, so I presume this was filled from another supply. Right, what else do we say about this map? Well, we've already talked about it, so let's move on a little bit. Here's the Next item to look at on Market Street, on the odd numbers side of the street from numbers 9 to 11, these are some of the oldest cottages or buildings on Market Street. 1791, built by a Mr. Magnall, was his name, John Magnall, and Margaret, his wife. And this information is apparently on some stone up under the eaves there, but I've never seen it actually. This is the same sort of row of houses in a more modern state. Some of you may remember Bateson's decorating shop in the corner there. The town hall was built in or opened in 1904, and here we have a slide showing the foundation stone being erected, and here's a picture of the completed building. Quite a prestigious architect, Bradshaw and Gas, they designed the building, and as you all know, it's built of this Robin terracotta bricks, because this stone can withstand the effects of stone and dust and doesn't get dirty like bricks do, and it certainly stood the test of time. On the side of the town hall are two plaques. One I haven't actually seen, is dedicated to the actor Robert Shaw.
As part of a deal with Plaid Cymru in the event that no one wins a majority.
Can someone who's speaking over me be quiet, please? There are two plaques on the town hall. The one dedicated to Robert Shaw, who was a famous actor born in Westhoughton, but probably more familiar to most of us is this other one, which is a tribute to Bolton District cricketers who died in Pretoria Pit disaster on the 21st of December 1910. And we've got a picture of that memorial there. So there are in fact two Ratcliffes mentioned on this. Isaac Ratcliffe is no relation of mine, but William Ratcliffe was one of my grandfather's brothers. The Carnegie Library was built in 1906 from similar stone, and we have some information here about the opening ceremony. So it was quite a major event in Westhoughton. Carnegie Library, Carnegie is world famous for donating money to build libraries, and that's certainly stood the test of time. Here's a more modern picture of the library behind the town hall. I'm saying that this number 22 Jubilee buildings, that's the first building on Library Street opposite the library, was built 1987, and we've got this carving of the cow's head above number 22, the journal office. There's some doubt as to whether this was the original building or whether it was built in the front by another builder. And also in the middle of this row, there used to be a bank. Another notable feature of this row is this carving of Queen Victoria. That's above number 26. And this was definitely produced by Mr. Josiah Harris, who carved in stone. I'm making that point, so there's something I need to point out later on about that. Right, later on has arrived. Further down Market Street, here we have the corner of King Street, and next to it is the Tinnis Woods, where we have these four heads, which do not appear to be carved in stone, so they're not attributed to this Josiah Harris. But one of them is this black gentleman called James Watkins, who was a slave in southern states of America, who came over here, escaped, and came over here and did lecture tours describing the problems of slavery. In the middle of this row, there was a bank, a district bank, and this is in the stonework. This is the emblem of the district bank. It's now a NatWest. Here we, much further down Market Street, we have the Empire Cinema, which was a major hallmark and a major source of entertainment for youngsters and old alike. This is a diagram by Tom Newton showing how symmetrical the building was. Now, over here on the left, we have two men sat on the top of the Empire building. Now, I'm not sure whether they were dissatisfied with the film and wanted their money back, putting some sort of protest in or what. And there's a picture of the interior of the Empire. I can just about remember that strange looking clock. Now, as I said, the Empire Cinema was very, very popular, particularly at weekends. And for children on Saturday afternoon, the Saturday matinee involved films about Hopalong Cassidy, a famous cowboy who always got the baddies, the Three Stooges and Flash Gordon. Now, I find myself, I can remember these films, but I wonder how many of today's films will be remembered in 50 or 60 years' time. The Empire Cinema ceased showing films in 1960 and changed to various uses, but eventually it was demolished in 2012. I forgot to mention something about the Empire, about the fact that courting couples used to fight to get the double seats at the back of the rows, but they had to dodge the flashlight of Miss Ashton, the manageress, who used to walk round and try and deter certain activities. Now, the Wheatsheaf Hotel is next to where the Empire used to be located, and surprisingly, although this was built in about 1870, we haven't got a great deal of information about this pub, other than the fact that there used to be cattle fairs in the bit behind it. Next door to it is this. Used to be a dentist, so, and then further down we have the very, very famous landmarks at the bottom of Market Street, Sunnybank and South View properties, built by the Peter Ditchfield that I mentioned before. These are Grade 2 listed buildings and were built in 1853 by this Peter Ditchfield, and that is Sunnybank. The one on the right is South View, and later on, this South View was occupied by a number of medical practitioners and surgeons. But of course, these properties are still look very much as they are now. This is an older view of Sunnybank, and after the World War I, the council persuaded some of the land to be given up to build the cenotaph, which we'll talk about in a minute, and some of the property was used as a clinic and as a maternity facility. Now, opposite these two houses, Sunnybank and South View, is the Ditchfield Gardens, which is, I'll show a slide on now. I'm not going to go through every item on this, but these Ditchfield Gardens, quite a small area of land, that land was purchased by the Ditchfields and set out quite well as an attractive garden. Some of you may remember the old tram shed located at just on the edge of the Ditchfield Gardens, and we have a Pretoria monument, which I'll talk about in a minute, and a drinking fountain in there. And more recently, there's a farm at the front of the gardens dedicated to the life of Tony Barry, who was world famous with the Houghton Weavers lead singer. Now, for some puzzling reason, I have to click this about 3 times before it moves on to the next slide. And there's work. So the Westhoughton Cenotaph, and you can see behind it the Sunnybank, the side of Sunnybank. And this was erected in 1923 by Westhoughton Council. It has the names of, it's a memorial to the people who lost their lives in the Great War and subsequent wars, people who lived in Westhoughton, I should say. And it looks as if this photograph is taken about Remembrance Day with all the wreaths at the base of it. Now, probably the oldest building in Westhoughton is this St Bartholomew's Church. Not this particular building, but should I say the site of St Bartholomew's Church, because the monks of Cockersand Abbey, although they had their base up near Four Gates of Brinsop, they actually built some sort of a chapel or church on this site. But there have been several other buildings on the same site. So this Tower of St Bartholomew's is also a Grade 2 listed building. Again, it's a painting by Tom Newton. We've got the cenotaph here in the foreground. So I'm not going to read all this information out. As I say, I've already given you a little bit of a summary of the background of this church. It's definitely the oldest building in Westhoughton, and or certainly Westhoughton Town Centre, and because it was established by the monks of Cockersand. It has been rebuilt several times, and there have been important donors to provide money to enlarge the church, etc. But tragedy befell the church on 1990 when it was burned down, except for the tower, so that the church has been completely redesigned over the last couple of decades. The parochial school is again the oldest school in Westhoughton. It's again a Grade 2 listed building. That picture shows it on School Street, but it didn't start at School Street. It started in the St Bartholomew's church grounds, and then moved to this site and was opened in 1739, as you can see there. So it was definitely a church school, and quite surprisingly big. It could cater for 280 boys and girls, and it's more or less, if you walk down School Street, it looks like that even now. In the cemetery of St Bartholomew's is this Pretoria Memorial and Tomb of the Unidentified. So each year on the 21st of December, with the Westhoughton Local History Group and other people have a service in St Bartholomew's and lay wreaths there. Again, it looks as if this photograph has been taken on the date when the wreaths have been laid. So this memorial is to the 24 unidentified bodies buried in the memorial below. They were unidentified bodies. This is the more recent memorial, I think erected for the in 2010, the centenary of the Pretoria Pit disaster, and this has all the names of the victims, and this is located in Ditchfield Gardens. One of the oldest pubs in Westhoughton is the Red Lion, and this is located at the junction of Wigan Road, Market Street and Church Street, well, more strictly School Street. And this was previously listed as Grade 2 building. Again, we can see a painting by Tom Newton. And this was an old staging point, and you can see that on the side of the building it's talking about bowling green and good stabling. The historical aspect of this pub is related to the fact that it was formerly a farmhouse belonging to the Pendlebury family, and the Pendlebury family, one of the oldest landowners in Westhoughton, and they owned the farm down School Street, Grundy Farm, etc. So Pendlebury's, they owned some of the Red Lion, and but now things have changed. This on the left, we have one of the oldest pictures of the Red Lion. I can just about remember it being sort of pebble dashed, and a more recent one in 2010. But now the pub has been demolished and is an old people's home. This drinking fountain is in the Ditchfield Gardens, and the story of it is as follows. It was donated by John Chadwick, who owned the silk mill in Church Street, which later became Whittlesworth, and the inscription on the back of the fountain reads, "This fountain erected by John Chadwick of the silk mill, Westhoughton, to the memory of his two sons, was presented by him to the local board, who have undertaken to maintain it for the use of public in perpetuity, September 1885. But his two sons, one drowned off the Isle of Staffa and the other died of fever. So this fountain was originally, as it says here, it was originally in front of the Sunnybank wall. Now then, this presentation is essentially in two parts. The first part was taken from the town trail. The second is from a presentation. Part is from a presentation that Brenda and myself did for an exhibition. I think it was for the World War I exhibition, and this gives us more detail about Market Street. And in a nutshell, from about 1920s onwards, we've got information about who occupied the various shops along Westhoughton. But the main trend is that housewives had to do shopping on a daily basis. They hadn't any refrigerators or freezers, so you had to go and buy bread or meat or fruit on a daily basis. And but also on Market Street, there were other shops selling services relating to work cloggers and ironmongers. And, and we also have the quite long-standing Green's Furnishers, one of the oldest shops on Market Street. But certainly the White Lion and the Wheat Sheaf are shown on the maps that I'm going to show you in a minute. We are quite up to date because in today's times, there's a letter from someone who's saying that the reason why high streets are in present decline is because there are so many chain store shops on high streets. whereas in France and Germany, they're all individual shops, like the ones we've listed here. Artisans, craftsmen, people who are tradespeople, and that is a sustainable way of organising a high street, I'm sure. Right, well, let's have a little look at a map. Well, the first thing to notice about this map is that it's dated 1844 to 47. And I have no idea why there's those range of dates, but certainly the period is about right. And it's a bit of a scratchy reproduction, but we can still see the White Lion at this junction here of Bolton Road, Mill Street, Market Street and Park Road. And we've still got this old cotton mill there, which has been burned but not flattened. Over here, it's quite interesting because 1844, I think I said before that the Bethel was constructed in 1853. Well, the Bethel Chapel started off in a number of houses on Park Road, number 26 or something like that. So that's where the Bethel started. We've still got these houses at the bottom, factory NOOK houses. The houses where I lived weren't even dreamt about. Surprisingly enough, there's a police station somewhere along Market Street. No town hall, no glebe mill, no library. And what I'm trying to point out to you is that the relative dearth, shortage, absence of buildings all along this stretch. Now, if we go to the next map, which is 1890, 50 odd years later, look at all this development here, all these buildings on every bit of Market Street except for the Market Square. But we can see that King Street isn't complete. It's just half a dozen or so houses along there. But it's amazing how much building has occurred in 50 years. Right, let's move on. So now I'm going to try and justify the remarks I've made previously about the shops and businesses in Westhoughton. And the number one business in Westhoughton was literally number one. The Clough's Printers, Excelsior Press at number one. And that was there for donkey's years. Number three is, well, a variety of activities, including a midwife, fruitery. Number five was, I said basins, but it had confectioners. Literally every other shop was a confectioner at that time. And what's this one? Oh, a clogger. Here we've talked about, well, we'll be talking about cloggers in a minute. So this is the advert for Clough's Printers. Another clogger there. I won't dwell on this. Martin's a name that crops up with the clogger. And we have another grocer there. This is a very old scratchy picture of the cloggers on number 9 Market Street. And you'll see, you can maybe just about make out that that's an image of a clog. Bear in mind that up to about 1950s, everybody wore clogs. I think I wore clogs until we started going to secondary school. Nobody thought twice about wearing clogs. So this is an advert for Martin's The Cloggers of 9 Market Street. Again, another confectioners, another clog maker, another confectioners. Chemist, I can just about remember a chemist being there. Chip shop. Now there were numerous chip shops or fish shops up and down Westhoughton Street as well. And surprisingly enough, I can remember as a lad, people used to go out at night and buy fish and chips after they've had the tea. They were so hungry. The Victoria Inn, again, this is a pub that we know very little about. There's very little been in black and white about the Victoria Inn. Again, Burton's didn't exist, so people had their suits made at local tailors or the co-op tailors. Fried fish, I've talked about fish before. We can't go past this one. Beardsworth hairdressers. If you had a haircut at Beardsworth, you didn't need one for another 6 months. It was so much. But in actual fact, his mother started off this shop, Beardsworth. Quite very famous shop on the high street, actually. Another confectioner. A temperance bar. Dearden's Temperance Bar. Now we've got some very old pictures here. This is 29 Market Street. This is on the corner opposite the Victoria pub. Next is Beardsworth, Mrs. Beardsworth, the original hairdresser. Further along, 33 looks as if there was a toffee shop. And again, a shop that I remember here, Albert Morris's, an electrical shop. They're all useful shops. That's what they had to be to survive. So that's Dearden's next door to there. And I think it eventually became Tommy Ramsden's, something of that nature. Again, we've got more fried fish, butchers, and another butchers at some stage, tailors, hat shop, milliners, fried fish. That's worth a mention. Tom Challenger, he was and his son were involved in the World War I, and we've got the details of their story in our archives. Again, fishmongers, bakers, confectioners. Now, some of you may well remember Dr. Racker, the surgeon who lives where the pub is now, and where Wetherspoons is located now. So this is the corner of Market Street. Again, more food. Oh, that's Challenger's I was talking about before. So they're all very useful shops that made a concrete, a shoe shop. What's this one? Well, this is another fish and chip shop, and again, so I think people must have had a lot of fish and chips to keep these shops going. More or less opposite the market was our Par's Bank, and this is a distinctive shape which we'll all remember, and of course we've got the name Par's Bank on the front. Now I think we're going back up Market Street to the even numbers, 26 Market Street. So I'm slightly out of order here. Here's a shot of Market Street, the White Lion here, Town Hall, Journal Office, and then we're about here, number 26. We've got a call at the Town Hall again first, and then the Greens Furnishers. Again, they have supplied Moorcroft vases and bedding and furniture for numerous years, and folded or closed just recently. Again, watchmaker and jewellery next door to the. This is quite a famous one on the street. Reggie Buller's, ironmongers, and he sold paraffin and all sorts of nails and screws, and everything in the shop was very, very useful. General ironmonger. these shops in the middle of the row were co-op shops, apart from this dairy here. And at the end, we've got McAllister's chemist at the end shop there, the corner shop. So this is King Street here. So there's an advert for McAllister's. Opposite King Street, 46, we have, in my day, it was certainly Westhoughton Co-op tailoring, where you could have a suit made there. 48 is Tinniswoods, I've mentioned before. It's quite surprising that Tinniswoods wasn't always a toy shop, that one of them started off as some sort of wireless and gramophone engineer. Oh, I've overshot myself a little bit. This is the corner of King Street again. Farshaw's was a fruit shop. There we can see apples piled up. We've already talked about these heads. These are above number along here, I think. This is a shot of Market Street from the other direction. Thornley's newsagent was there for ages, and you can see this is, I wouldn't like to put a date on this shop, but it's notable that all the men have flat caps on and all of the women are wearing shawls. For some reason, women, I don't understand it, women didn't wear coats, they always wore shawls. I don't know why. This again is a very famous picture of corner of Queen Street. Coop's Teas. Teas was a delicacy in this age at number 58, and quite expensive tea. And here's an advert for that shop. Next door, another grocer. This is quite a famous picture showing the end shop of that just before the market, Sharple's fruit shop. And we'll go on to the next one. And this shows, again, women with the shawls on, queuing up to buy goodness knows what from the Sharple's shop. Again, this is quite a famous shop because the son of this family, he was a prisoner of war in World War I, and we've got information about the prison camps that he was detained in. Now, up Queen Street is Rigby's blacksmiths, and you can see horses being shoed here, and all the lads in Westhoughton used to go and have a look at the exciting sparks and hot metal being used in that business. But it's surprising how many, of course, all farmers had a horse. Delivery of milk was by horse, and so they all had to go there and get the horses shod. Now this is the last slide, and it's probably one you'll recognise because there's a gentleman there called Mr. Ken Dodd, who must have attended Westhoughton Market. I don't know the date, and he's obviously tittling this lady with his tittling stick. But there's Ken Dodd. So Westhoughton is Market. That's probably its most famous moment. Yeah.
Well, first of all, big thank you, Garth, for that. Up and down. I don't know where anybody else is feeling a bit tired after that, but I am ready for a sit down now. Well, yeah, you heard that. I say the important duty was to thank you, Garth, for that journey up and down and in and out, up and down a few side streets as well as the main drag. I'm sure it brought back a lot of memories for many people. So you're not going anywhere just yet. So anybody, any questions for Garth?
Yeah, the map you showed early on, the OS one, you said you didn't actually know the date of it. but it's the, I'm pretty certain it's the 1893, which was surveyed in 1892. I just checked it out whilst you've been on.
Ah, right, 18. Yeah.
It had to be after 1877 because our house is on it.
Oh, right. Oh, right.
So 18, it's a 25 inch.
Yeah, oh, right, yeah.
Early on, you showed the wheat sheaf and
Yes.
said approximately 1870s. And then later on, you said on the 1844 map it's showing. Is that a different building?
Yes. The original building was behind the present wheat sheaf building. Yes, I should have said that. Yeah. That's probably why not much is known about the wheat sheaf. It sort of shifted position and probably shifted a bit of its history. Got a question for you. How many of you bought a pie from Joel Smith's?
Joel Smith. That's it.
How many of you bought a rice pie from Joel Smith?
Oh yeah. Can I ask a question when you?
Yeah, Sean, fire away.
We have a bit of a dispute, me and my husband, about where the tripe shop used to be.
Oh,
So if anybody knows where that was.
I think it was about.
I do. It was.
Oh.
It was round about where Green Arches is now.
That's it. That's right.
Yeah, it was round about there. It's either that one or the next. I think it was that one.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
So are we talking about next door but one to that Coops that I showed? Coops,
Yeah, round there. Yeah.
I agree in Thailand. Yeah. Tripe shop. Did you ever have any?
You know, they used to live behind that shop. There was a family lived. Norman Craburn lived. They lived behind the tripe shop. What the smell must have been like in that house! I can't believe it must.
I used to, in the 70s. I used to work with the granddaughter who said she remembered sitting in the window as a little girl pulling a tongue out at passers-by.
I think tripe was worse than medicine actually.
Oh, tripe's all right, but oh golly,
My dad's Aunt Amelia, who lived on Central Drive, where my mum lives now.
Yeah.
She always used to force me to eat tripe and onions.
Yeah.
Tripe and onions cooked in a sort of a creamy sauce. You know, like, oh, it was horrible.
Thank you.
Marta, do they have rice pies in Barcelona? Oh, she can't. She's unmute yourself.
I still have some in the freezer.
Yeah.
But no, you can't find these kind of things here.
I've got to say that the booklet, the Town Trail booklet, I think is a brilliant start.
I think
you know, it's for anybody who's new, it's a good place to start because it's very clear. It's a good publication.
Yeah.
I've got some here. If anybody lives in Westhoughton and wants one, I'll deliver them. Otherwise, they're £2, and if you want to pay back PayPal, have it posted, be another £2.
We've got another publication in the pipeline that the group have produced. Westhoughton's Places of Historic Interest, and that stretches all the way from Brinsop right down to Daisy Hill, and it talks about the various areas of Westhoughton, Wingates, Checkerbent, Daisy Hill, Hart Common, and picks out the oldest farms and the oldest buildings there. And it gives a little bit of a story about these. It is mainly about buildings, but that is just being edited at the moment, so it will be printed later on in the year. It is quite a good publication, about 32 pages. Well, the idea is that it should be available certainly in September, the same time that Margaret's Christmas cards and Tom's Christmas cards will be available. So if you feel like buying one and sending it to somebody, that will fit in. All right. you can buy a few if you want, because I think we're going to order 500.
The people that were transported to Australia for burning the mill, they have extensive families out there now. So if you're in touch with them, you can send
That's
them
right.
copies.
They should have. They should have. Yeah.
Can I just mention Sunny Bank? It's being renovated, and the guy is always there working on it. And the building on the right hand side, as you look at it from Ditchfield Gardens,
yes,
has got wooden paneling in it now. And they're talking to the guy doing it. He said it came from the PAROCHIAL Hotel. It's not original, but you can't really see it now. But when I'm going back about 18 months, 2 years, and they had the light on, and you could see it all inside. And I mentioned it to him, and he said, "Yeah, it's from the PAROCHIAL."
Yes.
All this talk about food got me remembering some of the things I'd had with a family we used to visit in Westhoughton. And at the time of the Houghton Wakes, Molly, the mother, she cooked a chicken pasty, which I don't think I'd ever had before or since. It was absolutely delicious. And I think she seemed to feel that that was traditional at the time of the Houghton Wakes. Has anybody else come across chicken pasties?
Yeah, I think Wakes pasties. We used to call those Wakes pasties, and they were specially made mainly during the Wakes, but I think at all times made them.
Yeah.
Weren't they the ones that had sort of a doll inside? There was some pasty that had something inside. What was that? I can't remember. There was something like that.
But it's important from the history group to make a record of what happened in Westhoughton, because so many buildings are changing purpose, are being demolished, so many traditions and work, everything changes. But somehow that has to be preserved, and that's what we try to do with booklets and websites and well, meetings. When people come to meetings and they say, "Oh, I remember this, I remember that, or, can you remember that?" type of thing, and it's sort of somehow pleasing to reminisce and be reminded of things you experienced in bygone days, really. Westhoughton is a fantastically interesting area because it's so big. It's such a large area, and with numerous railways run through it, numerous major roads run through it, and literally the area was so big there were scores of very, very old farms from 1610, and maybe something not many of you know about, that the Hargreaves carriers started off at a farm in Westhoughton and then started carrying cotton on mules, and then progressed to horse and cart, and then motorized canals, motorized vehicles, and then trains. And all that came from one farmhouse in Westhoughton and became a national company, and became part of the first public railway in Lancashire, the Bolton Lee Railway, built in 1828. Hargreaves was one of the leading people behind that. And then we've got the Holton family.
Yes.
But it's so, to do Holton Diaries, right. Well, to do a presentation on that would be impossible. You need about 3 or 4 presentations. It's such a dynasty, really.
Yeah.
But there's quite a bit of that going to be on this new.
Another big thank you from all of us, Garth, for
I've enjoyed it.
Another information-packed session.
Yeah.
And we all look forward to welcoming you all again for the April Zoom meeting, because it doesn't look like we're going to be back in Westhoughton Library anytime soon. Although there was a piece in today's Bolton News about the libraries opening up next week, but the notable exception was Westhoughton, still closed for maintenance work. It simply keeps saying. But I mean, even if the libraries are open, the other libraries, there won't be the public gatherings just yet. Anyway, the group gatherings. So we'll have to continue meeting this way.
Is it worth just saying what next month's meeting is? It's on the second Thursday, as always, which is the 13th of May.
It would be if I could remember it. You tell us.
Right, and it's tonight we've been looking at old history of Westhoughton, but we'll be looking at a more contemporary view in most cases. We've got a celebrated local artist called Bill Usher, who I think is with us tonight, and Bill will be talking about his artistry and showing us some of his paintings, and mainly about buildings around Westhoughton. So hopefully we'll get a good impression of how the town has changed from the old views to the new views.
We'll put the details on Houghton Herald as usual in due course. But thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.
And
Thank you.
safe journey home,
Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Good night.
Bye.